The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Every day, citizens around the country are faced with new dilemmas. Dilemmas that affect them profoundly. Whether it's injustice, discrimination, falling through the cracks, scandal and cronyism, balances of power, ethics, religious freedoms, state versus citizens, and unfunded mandates, and the list goes on and on and on. Welcome to Speak Up. It's directed at those who have fallen through the cracks, and it gives them a voice. It's your turn to speak up. To stand up and fight back.
Welcome to Speak Up. I'm Kevin Avard, your host, and today we're going to be talking about the Kinder Morgan pipeline, or some people would call it the Tennessee pipeline. But here in New Hampshire, most people are very familiar with the Kinder Morgan. And I'm asking a number of people to come on the show to tell their perspective of why they either like it or why they don't like it. I haven't found many people that want it. And today I have a guest who definitely doesn't want it, and for various reasons. And I would like to introduce you to Peggy Huard.
Thank you for having me on your show.
How do you say it?
Huard.
Huard. I was saying your name all wrong.
That's all right. Everyone butchers it.
Yeah, well, I butcher every name on the show, it seems. So we've been talking about this for a while, about the Kinder Morgan, and we've had a lot of meetings, whether in Milford, New Ipswich, Ringe. We went to some meetings out that way. Hollis was very successful at pushing them out of their, what do you call it, conservation area. And they spoke up, and they changed their directions because they invested millions of dollars in that conservation, and rightfully so, they should speak up. Why should they interrupt that? Many people are talking about, well, we have an energy crisis here in New Hampshire, but from what I understand, we do export energy here in New Hampshire. So there's a lot of misinformation out there about the pipeline, and many state reps in District 12 are very concerned about it. And I wanted a citizen's perspective. Tell us about your interest on the pipeline.
Well, first of all, I found out about it from my neighbors. I'm not close enough to get notice about it. I'm 3 houses down, considered to be in the incineration zone, but Kinder Morgan doesn't feel that important. So as soon as my neighbor told me about it, I went and learned as much as I could about it, grabbed all the information about it. And some of the problems with it, again, are the surprise and not reaching out far enough and not extending their cost far enough, so they're coming in as a low-cost project, when in fact they just have been negligent in addressing the environmental concerns. You talk about conservation land. My road is a watershed for our conservation piece of land, Robinson Pond, and they don't even have that written in there.
I used to go swimming there.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Did you grow up in that area?
Well, relatively in Nashua, but we go down there.
We go swimming, we go boating, go hiking down there. It's a beautiful pond. It's
now, a little bit of background about you. You're a CPA?
I'm a CPA, yeah.
And you've been a CPA for?
15 years.
Yeah, so you're...
So I'm fairly analytical, so I can grab onto all the analytical parts of it. And of course, is the rumors about the, we see in the news the explosions. And so that's very disconcerting for me, living 3 houses down, knowing that if my house is in that zone, if the pipe blows up, I'm automatically gone, never mind the fire. And no one at their company addresses that.
I thought maybe that, the term incineration zone was a bit of hyperbole, just a little bit overdrawn. But remember last year where in Massachusetts, not that there was this major explosion, but, well, people would be driving on a road and they'd be seeing bubbles come up out of the road. Do you remember that?
No, I don't remember that. That'd be pretty scary.
Well, throughout the road. The road was cracking, and apparently there was a leak.
We had a collapse of the road in Concord over the summer. Do you remember that? I think that had to do with either probably water line. I don't think it was a pipeline because there was no explosion. but it had completely collapsed. That was pretty.
You do hear about explosions
You
from
do,
time to time.
right? So that's disconcerting, knowing that I am in that blast incineration zone.
Right.
But the conservation land, yeah, and that's a big problem throughout the whole project because it starts down in New York and goes through some of Massachusetts and up through a lot of the, you said Rindge and Milford and New Ipswich is proposed to have the compressor station. That's very horrifying. My family and I went up for a ride up there, and you look at the area that the blow-offs are supposed to emit, and it's kind of in the area of Pack Monadnock and Mount Monadnock.
Yep.
So you wonder how far that's going to spread the emissions. And you mentioned earlier before we went on the air the compressor station in Pelham Wyndham. There's a small compressor station that came on, I believe it came on with Granite Ridge when I did my research. So we have a natural gas generated electricity plant called Granite Ridge in Londonderry, and you would think that would be enough to generate electricity for our area. But the interesting thing is when this whole thing started, people thought, I don't use natural gas. And then you come to find out that it's all about generating electricity.
Many businesses might use that. And
but it's about generating electricity, it's not necessarily about heating. So one of the problems that I see, that I've learned that is happening, is we're feeding off one pipe. The power plants and the franchise, the heating, delivering the natural gas. And so what happens is they keep building out and taking the gas for heating when it gets colder. And so then all of a sudden there's not enough, I guess, for the power plants, and they have to have liquefied natural gas come in, or oil, some other form to help them continue to generate electricity. But so then our electricity system is so complex, it's all of New England, not just New Hampshire, it's all of New England. So we have, I had actually traced my power lines, and we get electricity all the way from Comerford, New Hampshire. It goes down to Sandy Pond, Intertine Groton, lowers the voltage, and then sends it back out. So that's all goes together. And it's very amazing and interesting, because a similar thing is going to happen with this proposed pipeline. Is this fast-moving, high pressure coming from Wright, New York, all the way to Dracut, nonstop. And from Dracut, it gets all pulled together because they have a maritime pipeline come down from Canada. And I guess, I think there's one or two other ones proposed. Or so once it gets there, it's pulled together, and then it's fed back up this way. So it just seems, we just have a lot of pipes. But the other thing we see happening is more export. There have been a record-breaking amount of applications submitted to FERC for export facilities. And there's been a handful approved and several others waiting for approval. One of the biggest one that was approved is the one in, I'm trying to think of it, something Cove. Drawing a blank, but there's one, I want to say in Maryland, and they used to export, and they just got permission, I guess, to reverse that and import. The other thing I had found was, I found a document that showed that 2 years ago, for 2 years, about a year ago, they were exporting and importing through Boston Harbor. And so they're already doing something with liquefied natural gas. Make a long story short, Salem Harbor used to have a coal plant, and they're shutting down the coal plants because they're claiming that they're bad for the environment, bad for the emissions. But what happens is the natural gas industry is regulated by the Natural Gas Act, which was passed by, signed into law by George Bush, and Dick Cheney, of course, was vice president at that point. And it gave his company, Halliburton, a lot of rights to just push some projects through. And one of those things is, from what I've heard, I'm not an attorney, but they're allowed to override some of the state and local environmental laws. So it makes it look like they're not environmentally, that they are environmentally friendly, when in fact we're ignoring a lot of laws.
Now, New Hampshire, I think we're shutting down our coal plant as well.
I heard that too.
They spent millions of dollars on that scrubber, which made it one of the cleanest in the country.
But then they're shutting it down after we paid for that, because I'm sure that came to the ratepayers.
Yeah, there was a deal that was made a number of years back that still kind of got me scratching my head. What were we thinking?
But to get back to the Salem Harbor, just to quickly go back, so they closed that, and they've actually building a brand new natural gas facility. So we're not being told that this Northeast Energy Direct pipeline is going there, but you look at all the maps and you go to Drake it, and there's something called Linfield Lateral off of it, which is being disclosed. But what you don't see is a Salem Lateral is already being built and has been approved by Spectra.
And Spectra said that they could augment their lines.
They did. There's a couple of other proposals out there.
Without
one competing with NED, exactly the equivalent, about the same amount of natural gas coming in. But somewhere in between the Salem Lateral and the the Salem Harbor Lateral, there's going to be a proposal for the connection between the two. You know that. We're filling in the blanks in a lot of places because they're not telling us. But I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I was trying to follow my thought there.
That's fine.
But yes, so they are closing down other coal plants, claiming after we put the scrubber on that it's still not environmentally safe, but yet they're pushing through NED by ignoring other environmental laws. I think that's the scariest thing. They're ignoring it. You see other places right now. Spectra is working on one, West Roxbury, the AIM pipeline. And there's a West Roxbury Lateral. They're actively protesting it as they're constructing. People are hanging themselves from trees, and I have to wonder what I'm going to do if they come through our neighborhood. How far am I going to fight? Because they're actually volunteering to do civil disobedience, training them. Don't resist arrest. Don't give them any reason to give you a greater charge than you have. Just go. And people, so I'm on several Facebook pages, so it's very interesting to see where they are. They're pushing it right down to the end. They've.
Have you reached out to the governor?
I have. I've not spoken to her. I met her at a parade, and I've at one point, everything I found, I was sending it to Governor Hassan, Representative Kusker, and Senator Ayotte.
And what was the response that you got?
Well, they were concerned. I got some form letters back, and they were pretty positive. I have to understand their position as well. I mean, obviously, they have to defend the state. Everyone has to defend their level. They're not going to come out and defend me. They're defending the state, which will hopefully defend me. I don't remember the exact content of the letter, but a lot of them, seem like form letters. But they were working on it, and they thanked me every time I sent it. I actually did meet with someone from Senator Ayotte's office a couple weeks ago. He came, they're touring the towns. So I actually went to the town, and I was the only one there, so I talked to him a little bit more there. So they're receptive, they're concerned, because there's so many people. I think there's a couple of people just bombarding their Facebook pages, so they can't forget us. So yeah, I mean, I've talked to several people at that level. My district, okay.
Are people upset about Spectra?
I think they would be just as upset, although there's so many different things. There's the corruption level, there's the environmental level, the trees that are coming down.
Now, Spectra said that they could augment their pipes and their capacity with very little environmental impact.
Right. That's what they said. I'd have to see the plan
in contrast to Kinder Morgan.
Yeah, I'd have to see the plan because what they're saying and what they're doing are two different things. Because right now I'm also faced with the Merrimack Valley reliability project for 4 towns that are involved with the pipeline. We're also involved with a high voltage transmission line project in the same exact spot that Kinder Morgan's proposing.
How is Massachusetts so successful at stopping that pipeline from going through, and do you know?
I don't know.
Okay.
That I'm not sure, because I would love to know, and why haven't we done
the destination is going to the same place.
The Attorney General, right, and they push it to us. Well, this Massachusetts Attorney General just came out with a report on the study that showed that we don't need it. Did you see that at all?
No.
That was most recently posted to Facebook, so I don't know what that will do, because one of the things I've heard is FERC just ignores everybody.
So why, as far as our energy costs, New Hampshire has some of the highest in the region, in the country.
Correct.
So they're justifying it because we need that. Why are our energy costs so high?
Well, some of the reasons that I see, of course, fraud. And if you look at something that happened in 2001, there was a California electricity crisis, which was all about fraud. They fraudulently
There were
manipulate
brownouts and all that type of thing.
brownouts. You know, some of the things falsely, falsely, or like right now I see them building out franchise when we don't really need it, and so then that hurts the power plant. They're not planning properly. We have ISO New England. The cost for ISO and FERC. ISO comes to us, I believe. Not exactly clear, but their budget somehow comes to us. And if you look at their budget, it's astronomical. I guess they run 2 different systems.
Was that fraud
a safety
proved?
system. I'm sorry?
Was that fraud in California?
The articles I have, there's a piece on Wikipedia, I believe it was proven, and it was all part of the whole Enron thing, and there were some other.
Everybody's heard about Enron.
Right, everyone's heard about Enron and mentioned Enron. Kinder Morgan has evolved from Enron. So that's another scary piece about Kinder Morgan, which Spectre wouldn't have that, but they have their own piece of.
Isn't there another one, Yankee?
Yankee is smaller, I think. I don't see them proposing anything for here. I've heard of them. I think they're a little further north, too.
This all begs a question. We have the Keystone Pipeline, which was the oil. And some say it's a safer way to transport oil because now, just recently, there was a huge derailment of oil, and of course now it's all over the place, whatever. And the president has resisted that. Why isn't he resisting this pipeline?
I would love to know that, because that was great to hear it, and it gave us a little bit motivation. We thought maybe they'd come out, and we've been begging Hillary Clinton. People have been going out. Ironically, we're in a new presidential election cycle, and so we had the ideas of let's go drill the candidates. There's so many of them. Who could stop it now? Don't give us lip service and what you're going to do when you get there. Show us now you can stop it. And then all of a sudden, they stopped the Keystone. Well, my first thought was Hillary was so ignorant she didn't know what pipeline we were fighting for, because all we have is signs that say no pipelines. But I really don't know why they won't come out.
I've actually talked to Rand Paul, and he's the one I'm actually supporting. He's my guy.
And what does he have to say about it? I'm curious.
Well, his issue is with the private property, as well as his mine. And, and I personally, if we do not have property rights, our liberties are just, it's just academic.
I think that's the scary thing, being a property owner.
And being a property owner, and whether you can sell it, or what are your rates of resale, are you going to lose the equity, what is there an insurance? There's a whole ton of questions. And then the whole idea of using eminent domain, which is really troubling to me. Now, if you're going to build a road, obviously you'll have eminent domain, so that there's common use. But if you use eminent domain to enrich a company, where
private company,
a private
publicly
company
held company, but
which will hold exclusive rights to that particular product, and that's contrary to our liberties.
Exactly, and it's a violation of the law. I don't believe it's supposed to. The government's supposed to have that right. And they you would think, would have to buy the pipeline and own the pipeline in order to do that.
I just think this is an interesting alignment of the stars, because you have both conservatives, you have libertarians, you have environmentalists, liberals, even on the other side, where they're all coming together on this particular issue, which is unique in itself. And I think it's an interesting coalition that's coming together. We have state representatives that are conservative and liberals as well. And I'm thinking, wow, maybe there's a reason for this.
Because it's so absurd that everyone can see it, I think. And I think it's, we're in New Hampshire. This is New Hampshire. This isn't a city. We have a lot of rural land. We have a lot of conservation, a lot of vacation land. That is going to be ripped up. The farmers are being offered a sum of money for their destroyed crops for so many years, but you're never going to get that crop back.
Well, in addition to that, if you're going to make an offer, make it sweet, because you people are going to make some money off this, and that's fine. That's capitalism, but make a fair offer. I mean, if all these landowners said, "Yeah, fine, that's great," make me a millionaire, make me a billionaire. It's like the Clampets,
Well, they're doing that in the fracking sites, and what happened with the fracking sites is you have the farmers who not slave, but they work very hard. So they've got a big plot of land for their farm, and so my understanding is these companies came in and asked them to use part of their land, offered them, a couple $100,000, which is very good to these farmers. You're just going to give me $200,000 without working for it, claiming that it's safe, but then yet you hear stories, or there was a video that they could light their water on fire because even though they were far away, it was getting into their water stream and hurting animals.
And we've heard stories where
Right.
that's always happened.
But you don't know if it's true. That's a story.
Right. I think it's interesting, though, in where people can come together with a common thing, where the private property is it's being taken. And that's cause for great alarm when the feds can come in, or a company can come in and gloat, and they have maybe all their attorneys that are set in their propaganda pieces. You always hear the commercials, well, we have, high cost of energy, therefore we need to enrich one other particular. It's not real free capitalism that's going on here. That's crony capitalism, in my opinion. So you're connected with a number of groups.
Yeah, I'm connected by Facebook. I'm not part of any of them. I follow them all and look at what's going on. So you've got the preview of what's going on in West Roxbury. So you see them doing the civil disobedience, and that's great. So you start to think, oh, are we going to do that, or am I just going to? I've packed up my house started to pack up my house a couple of times. Say, I'm just going to move. I'm not going to fight this. But then I stopped, and we looked at a couple of houses, and I said, I'm not ready to leave. It's not time. It wasn't. My dream was to stay there and retire there.
And what town do you reside in?
Hudson. So it's a really pretty rural area, and we've been there for 15 years, and it's very pretty. In the summertime, you're on a vacation land. You can walk to the pond. We canoe down there. We actually stayed at Pawtuckaway a couple of years ago, and I said, why did we bother? Because our area, it was the same thing. We kind of camped on their pond. But it was like we walked to the pond. We have to walk a little bit. It's not right there, but here we are. We put the tent in our yard and walk down there. We have a beautiful vacation area.
Now, I took a tour of one of those plants, the
compressor station.
Compression plant in Pelham. I think it was like in February or something like
this year.
This year, and I posted it on my Senate page, Facebook page.
Okay.
And I'm just pointing to how it comes out. I happened to have stay plates, and the gentleman let me take a tour. And he was very nice. He, I just said, people are really concerned. Would you let me, and he took me around. And he showed me the jet engine on the inside.
Was it loud?
Well, it wasn't running at the time, but the walls were extremely thick.
Okay, so it's inside something.
It's inside a contained area, and I asked him, what does this sound like? He says, well, when everything's shut, when it's actually running, everything is shut. Okay. And it sounds like a lawnmower about 60 to 100 yards away. And right across the way, of course, is a retirement area. Of course. Not home, but development.
A development, right.
And there's Beaver Brook that goes around it. And it looked clean. There are all kinds of filters, probably as many as the size of this room, the studio, that would suck up the air and, of course, filter out the air. So he was very kind. And then I, as we were going down the driveway, there was a wetland area. Oh. And I said, oh. And he said, well, now that's where the pipeline's going to be coming from. And I said, oh, interesting. So how are you gonna do that? And he says, well, you know how they build tunnels? Right. In the big cities, they're actually going to tunnel underneath it. I've heard that. Yeah. And they're going to tunnel into the Merrimack, too. Yeah. Well, these are proposals. This is one of the employees, and he was very kind, and everything did look on the up and up, and just wanted to get the perspective, because people were talking immensely at that time, and so I wanted to see what one of these looked like, and if it was loud. And he said that it's only operating at a way under capacity at this particular time, and that's why they wanted the extra gas. But the issue still remains with me, is that if the pipe is going to cut through somebody's property, or is going to go under somebody's property, or has to go through somebody's property without their permission, that's a no. Right. It's a big no. We've said no, and that's that. I'm curious, when you were visiting the compressor station, did you witness what's called a blow-off? They're supposed to release the pressure and blow some of the natural gas and emissions into the air. That's what I've been hearing about. I didn't see and I've yet to see that. I guess there's a compressor station proposed for New Ipswich and one at the Drake at Pelham line. There were there was a big filter system that you could tell it's one just by a casual glance at it. I've seen videos, and they showed us a video of a blow-off, and it looked very, lots of stuff coming up.
onto the air. Have you ever been out to either the coal plant or Granite Ridge and you see what's like Granite Ridge looks pretty clean, but you can see the cloud coming out of
I used to go fishing right near the
yeah,
coal
my husband
plant.
works at Stonyfield, actually, so he's right next to Granite Ridge. But you can see, it seems clear, it looks like a cloud, but it is something coming out of there.
Yeah.
And so you wonder what's
At
coming
this
out of there.
particular time, I didn't. I'm just
No.
trying to do my own research
Yeah.
and get an independent view. But the more I'm looking into it, the more I see it, the more you know, people are concerned, and they have a right to be, and they don't want their property or their environment
Exactly.
to. And okay, the people's will should matter. We are a republic and a democracy where, okay, enough. You don't have a right to take our property without my
What's
say-so.
really scary is they've approached my road. It cuts across my road, and there's 2 houses on either side of the row. And if they continue to, you know, offer these 4 people a nice piece for their property and they take it, that leaves the rest of us with no restitution, no monetary value, and our property will definitely decrease, but they claim it won't. They're making a lot of false claims that I'm trying to
That troubles me. See, that's part of taking, if you want to stay there, and they build that, and will that affect the equity into your home? And for a long term, will there be an increase in your insurance? Or how about the resale value?
Exactly. The insurance is a question. I asked my insurance company, it's too new. They've never been faced with the size of a pipeline.
Well, how do you plan for an unknown like that?
Right.
And
that's a thing.
There are some people that live on fixed incomes that are...
I'm one of those. I try my hardest, but, you know, I don't have mysterious money
There are seniors that live in these...
Seniors, right, exactly.
And
even
they
a lower
can't increase
fixed income, especially in Hudson. Hudson is actually a low income. Parts of the town are lower income. They're putting some of the more expensive developments in Hudson. And in Hudson alone, it's coming in from the Bacchus side and coming across Griffin, which is going to come through one of the farmland, and then come over David, which is ours, and 2 big pieces that are owned by PSNH. So it's going up Kenya, Lenny, and then coming out the Londonderry side. There's 2 big pieces that are owned by PSNH, and then the rest of it's private property. And these houses were built to begin with. Some of them are so close to the power lines. If you go out to Litchfield...
How can people get in touch with you to find out more information?
Well, I do have my email address you can contact me at, and it's Hudson, HUDSON _Liberty, LIBERTY, at Yahoo, YAHOO.com.
Well, I appreciate you coming on the show today, and I hope to have more people.
So glad I finally got here.
Yeah, absolutely. And we hope to have more people to come on and tell their perspective as well. It's important that if we're going to make an impact, if you want to stop this thing, more and more people have to speak up.
Definitely. And don't be afraid to speak up. I think that's part of it, is we're often thought of the eco-terrorists.
Well, until next week.
That's good.
Thanks for watching Speak Up, and we hope that this has been informative to you. And if you want to come up and talk about the pipeline, please contact me at speakupnh@gmail.com. Until next week, thanks for watching. Thank you for watching Speak Up, and we want to thank our sponsor, Aardvark Cleaning. If you have a carpet job, call Aardvark. They're the best in town. And if you have a story and you want to be heard, contact me, Kevin Avard, at speakupnh@gmail.com. That's speakupnh@gmail.com. We'll get your voice heard. Thanks for watching. Until next week.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.